Chapter 70. Sweat was pouring like a waterfall. Phew. When Jogul realized he wasn't dead, his entire body began to pour out sweat as if to prove he was still alive. He was so drenched that it was difficult to open his eyes. Soon, his body started to tremble. What if he had cut just an inch deeper? No, not even an inch more. Jogul might have died with his head split open if the sword had been stopped just a hair later. He wanted to curse, but the shock he felt prevented him from speaking. His body was trembling, and despite his best efforts, there was no soothing that fear. Chongmyong smiled and looked at Jogul. How was it? What? I asked, how was it? What the hell do you mean? How was it, you son of a bitch? Normally, he might have found the words to answer, but Jogul didn't have the mind or body to spare right now. Do you feel like you've died? Jogul squeezed out the last bit of his strength. I feel like I lost, you crazy bastard. Despite being cursed, Chongmyong didn't seem to mind. It was natural. Jogul had experienced what it's like to go to hell and back. He was bound to be upset. If Jogul had a bit more strength, he might have rushed and attacked Chongmyong for putting him through that. Okay, Sion can rest now. Chongmyong turned around cheerfully, shifted his gaze to the other Sahyongs who were looking at him. Flinch. Those who made eye contact quickly lowered their gazes. Sahyongs, think very carefully. Do you think you can really avoid this? That devil! How did such a person even enter Mount Hua? Is the Taoist supposed to be like this? Looking at Chongmyong, they were sure that he was a perfect example of what a Taoist shouldn't be like. Come on, don't waste time. If you want to get strong, you need to step forward. Great Sahyong! Yunjong glanced at Chongmyong with shaky eyes before turning his head and averting his gaze. Jonghak, how about you go next? Sahyong, I think he called for you. So you're not going out? When Yunjong turned his head and asked, Jonghak bowed his head. Everyone here has turned into something strange because of him. Still, Yunjong had the dignity of a Sahyong. But after Chongmyong came, things changed. It wasn't like Yunjong was the only one who changed though. Aren't you going to come? Chongmyong sighed, seeing the Sahyongs push one another and try to avoid him. Such a shame. The Sahyongs who should be helping each other are fighting with one another. Who do you think is the reason for this, you bastard? Did you sell your conscience somewhere? If only you weren't here, this place would be at peace. Desperate cries echoed within the disciples' minds, but certainly didn't come out of their mouths. Seeing them like that, Chongmyong nodded. There is only one way to unite the quarreling Sahyongs. Brotherhood blooms when you share in each other's sufferings. Only by overcoming tribulations together will love unite you. Don't worry, I'll be sure to treat you all fairly. What? Chongmyong raised his sword. If you won't come to me, then I'll come to you. Here I come. Don't come, you crazy son of a bitch. Whether they wanted it or not, Chongmyong, who seemed to have gone mad, rushed at them. Frightened, the disciples tried to run. But Chongmyong pursued everyone like a wolf after sheep. You, get over here. Who want to go to you, you insane freak? Yunjong, who was screaming, closed his eyes as the sword fell towards his head. The third-class disciples, scattered around the training hall, all trembled with frightened eyes. No, mother! Father, I promise to live a good life. The beef jerky, I hid it under the bed. Are you seriously thinking about food right now? Chongmyong clicked his tongue as the Sahyongs spread out all over the place. All right, you all did well. Normally, they would have been furious, but the current disciples didn't even have the strength to yell or shout. Having experienced a real sword fall on their head at frightening speed, they felt as if they had been pushed through the gates of the underworld. They didn't want to do anything that would instigate Chongmyong to do it again. Yunjong wiped the sweat running from his brows with trembling hands. That fucking bastard! Yunjong had been beaten by Chongmyong countless times, but this was different. It felt like he had stepped 1 foot into the underworld this time. Chungmyeong looked at everyone and spoke. How was that? What? Fortunately, Jogul, who had rested, was able to speak. Why didn't you stop my attack? Huh? It was an obvious strike, so why didn't you try to stop it? After doing all this, was he really asking that? Jogul exclaimed, nearly in tears. It was fast. It was so fast that I couldn't even think about stopping it. Even a 3-year-old child would understand that it couldn't be stopped. Is that so? Chungmyeong smiled. You understand well. You... Jogul gritted his teeth. Then why didn't Sahyong stop it? Huh? Jogul looked at Chungmyeong with blank eyes. Just as he was about to say something to refute, Chungmyeong slashed the sword down. Pah! Dust scattered, and the sound of air being torn apart echoed around. Simple, isn't it? It wasn't just Jogul. The other Sahyongs also stood up and watched Chungmyeong's sword. This was the same as the strike you did to us? Yes. Wasn't it several times faster though? Was it this gentle? It's the same. A sword that's falling on your head would naturally seem different than a sword strike you watch from a distance. Jogul was an intelligent guy in his own way. He quickly understood what Chungmyeong was hinting at. You mean, I can do it too? With training. Chungmyeong raised his sword. Look! And he slashed. Pah! Jogul firmly engraved that scene into his memory. It was undoubtedly not blinding speed or advanced skill. It was just a plain, simple slash straight to the ground. Hold the sword and slash. A simple movement performed so flawlessly that it seemed to paint a portrait in time. Jogul opened his mouth unwittingly. This is a drop slash. Jogul tried to speak, but could not. You've built your body. Now you need to utilize it to handle the sword. First, the lower body. Chungmyeong stomped for a firm footing. Firmly fix your lower body. Raise the strength up till the waist. Transfer power to the fingers. Unite it with internal strength and strike out all at once. Pah! Chungmyeong smiled. Easy, right? After hearing the explanation, Yoonjong spoke with a heavy voice. I understand what you are saying. You think that we should wield a simple sword based on a disciplined body rather than pursue flashy swordsmanship. This is a one-hit fatal kill. Chungmyeong supplemented Yoonjong's explanation. There is no thought of swinging the sword a second time. If you can't deliver a killing blow in one strike, then be prepared to die. Yoonjong sighed. This is why he showed us this. It was said that one action could speak 1,000 words. There was a massive difference between hearing about a sword technique and directly facing it. It wouldn't have been easy for people who never experienced the fear of that sword falling on their heads to understand what it meant to be on the verge of death. But Chungmyeong, Yoonjong exhaled and called him. I get what you mean, but we are disciples of Mount Hua. Would it be meaningful to win in such a way? So what if we are disciples of Mount Hua? If we are disciples of Mount Hua, shouldn't we defeat our opponents with Mount Hua's sword arts? Chungmyeong looked at Yoonjong as if his words were absurd. What did I do just now? A down slash. What's the first form of the 6th equilibrium sword? A downward slash. Right. Isn't the 6th equilibrium sword one of Mount Hua's techniques? When Chungmyeong asked that, Yoonjong coughed. I didn't think it through. Chungmyeong clicked his tongue and looked at everyone. The 6-fold technique used in the 6th equilibrium sword is the foundation of all of Mount Hua's techniques. Everything starts and ends with the 6-fold movement. Chungmyeong looked at all those who were trying to avoid his gaze. You are chasing after more advanced techniques like the falling petal swords and the 7-star steps without fully mastering the basics. Oh, the night air is quite refreshing. The moon is bright too. The third-class disciples were flushed red in embarrassment and spoke strangely to avoid the topic. You need to clearly understand this. Chungmyeong's voice sank low. His usually playful tone had turned serious. Noticing this, his Sahyongs focused intensely on what he had to say. If you can't master the 6th equilibrium sword properly, there is no point learning any other swordsmanship. All the sword arts of Mount Hua are based on this. A building with an unstable foundation will collapse with even the slightest wind. Everyone nodded. If they hadn't seen it with their eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. But haven't they already experienced it now? The sword seemed so strong that I didn't think I could stop it. A simple strike seemed like the best technique in the world. What's important isn't the sword art being used, but the person who handles the sword. Jogul got up and looked at Chongmyung. Chongmyung, yes, I will just ask one thing. Sure. Jogul cleared his thoughts and opened his mouth. I understand that the sixth equilibrium sword is important, but we aren't you. It may sound silly, but we need the strength to break the nose of those Jongnam bastards right now, more than the strength of a distant future. To be honest, you are the only one who can use that technique so skillfully. That's why I need to ask. Jogul's eyes shone. If we do what you tell us, we won't lose to the Jongnam sect, right? Instead of answering, Chongmyung sighed. Seeing his reaction, Jogul bit his lip. I must seem pathetic to him. A person who learns martial arts should not dwell on the results of one fight for long. But losing to that sect was an experience that he had never wanted to go through again. That shame and humiliation. What did Sahyung even take away from what I said? Huh? Chongmyung blinked his eyes. You think you will lose to the Jongnam sect? Someone like that deserves to die. A disciple of Mount Hua losing to a scoundrel from the Jongnam sect. I'll smash that disciple's head myself. Jogul trembled as he looked into the burning eyes of Chongmyung. I can understand us behaving like that, but what kind of grudge does he have towards the Jongnam sect? A guy who just entered Mount Hua. Didn't I tell you, I'll make you all win? Chongmyung raised his sword and pointed to the Sahyung. There is no such thing as a glorious defeat. Winning is the only answer in a fight, whether you need to hit their crotch or throw dust in their eyes. Once you win, it's all over. Cowardice? Don't even talk about it. Do you think a man who's been decapitated on the battlefield can complain about cowardice? There is no such thing as companionship in a battle. Win by any means necessary. Chongmyung nonchalantly made a declaration that would shock the elders if they had heard it. Seeing such a scene, Jogul smiled. Right, this guy is normally like this. It felt reassuring for some reason. So what do we do now? How can we use a sword like you? It's simple. Chongmyung smiled and spoke. First, we will start by swinging the sword 10,000 times. That must be a joke, right? No way! Of course! I'm just joking. It was a joke. Chongmyung had an ominously bright smile. Do you want to be defeated in the future? Or do you want me to kill you now? It seemed like there was a bigger villain inside Mount Hua than the Jongnam sect.